So good morning, everyone, and thanks, Liz, for that introduction. I should say here on stage that I'm absolutely delighted and honored to be here. This is my first year at Pixel, Power to the Pixel. And even though it's day one, it's obvious that there's going to be a lot of really great thinking shared here. I am going to cover off a little bit more around this idea of people and storytelling and people and technology, because I think it's actually quite important. Specifically, I'm going to talk about storytelling from the audience's perspective. Now, one of the questions I'm often asked in my capacity as a promoter, not necessarily an expert in innovation and communications, is how should we think about innovation? What are the new mental models that we need to adopt if we want to be successful innovators in communications? And my stock answer to that question has always been, well, think like the consumer. Put yourself in the shoes of an audience and then try to over-deliver against any expectations that they may have of what you're going to deliver for them. And whilst that's an accurate summary of the process of innovation, it's probably a shallow one. And that's because not everybody can act upon it. Not everybody has access to information about the ways that consumers think and interact with content and media. And not everybody is comfortable with the idea of actually thinking like the consumer. But as we've heard today, it's really important that we have a complete understanding of people if we want to be innovative in marketing communications. And that's perhaps even more important given the volatility of the media and technology landscape. So that's what I want to talk about today: people and innovation, people and storytelling, the mental models, the new mental models that we need to adopt, if you like, the social science of 21st century ideas. Now, my thesis is very simple. If we want to be successful innovators and communicators in the 21st century, and successful cross-platform creators and architects, we need to think very carefully and very closely to the motivations that people have to consume. And it's not about us changing any philosophy that we have around cross-media storytelling or transmedia storytelling. It's about an adaptation of our approach, and it's very much is very much in line with the previous presentation. But before I talk about motivations, I want to share with you a short video. And I share this video with you because I think it does kind of encapsulate the importance of this idea of the intersection of technology and storytelling, which I think is a foundation for all of our conversations in transmedia. Some of you may have seen this video. Hands up. This is my interactive bit. Hands up, those of you who have seen the video. Not that many people. Well, those people who haven't seen it, this is Google's promotion of Google Glass at this year's New York Fashion Show. And I absolutely love this video because I think it does two things really, really well. First of all, it takes its audience on a completely new journey, in this case, around the world of fashion. Secondly, it uses new technology to do that, in this case, Google Glass. Everybody that I've spoken to in the world of fashion absolutely loves this video. And I'll come on to talk about why I think that is the case. Just for those who don't know, this video that I'm about to show you is the first video shot entirely using Google Glass, and it was designed to communicate the passion and personal energy that needs to go into the development of a successful fashion show. So let's see if this technology works.
Oui. 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 Qu'est-ce que tu veux? Un sourire. Oui. Ok. 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 Go.
When I was a young girl, I did not know what I wanted to do, except that I knew the woman I wanted to be. go. I wanted to be able to pay my own bills, and I so much wanted to be independent. My goal in life is to tell every girl, every woman in the world that they can be the woman they want to be. I'm filming. It's very good. Very good. Real Cinderella shoes. They are beautiful. Fashion Week is crazy because it's a lot of work. And then at the end it only lasts 10 minutes. I'm glad that I didn't forget the gold coin that used to belong to my father. During the war, when he had to escape, he had this gold coin in his socks. And it's a very good luck coin. Okay guys, I'm off to the show. Fashion Week is very important for New York City. Lots of people come in from all over the world, and it's just this incredible moment of total energy.
Did you see that with the glass?
But it feels like an elephant shaking his big great trunk for the hell of it. You know that you're dreaming about being up I am. Too bad the chance of my
Okay, girls, I want to say something. First of all, the most important thing is that you are yourself and you think of the woman you want to be and you just have fun and be beautiful.
We live in such an amazing world. Things that we thought would be science fiction exist, where you can reach everything at every time, anytime, and it goes so fast. But fashion, technology, it's all about life, and it's all about being the woman you want to be.
I absolutely love that video. I think it's got so much energy, and it's really interesting when you think about that video being shot by a new technology, something that allows people to see the world of fashion from one person's perspective or from several people's perspective. When we think about, no, that's not my presentation. When we think about storytelling, we think about storytelling at the intersection of technology. It really is about the ways that we can take audiences on completely new journeys and simply use technology as a way to do that. But let's kind of switch gears a little bit and move away from the world of fashion and into the world of motivational psychology. Motivational psychology is a really important area of exploration for a lot of social scientists and a lot of business. And its value lies in the capacity to help us understand, to predict, and even to influence human behavior. Now, the equation in motivation psychology is actually a very simple one. It says that if you understand the internal and external structures that govern certain actions, you're more likely to be able to influence those actions in the future. And I think the same applies in communications, the same applies in storytelling. If you understand the motivations that people have to consume certain types of entertainment and media, then you are much likely to be more likely to be able to produce content and media that people want to consume and share and act upon. So the important question for us to ask as we seek to develop even more powerful story experiences for our audience is what motivates people to consume and create and share media. Now, the answer to that question became apparent to me during the early phases of my career in advertising. people are motivated to consume media and entertainment because they want to connect and disconnect. They want to connect to new things, to new ideas, and they want to be disconnected from the world. Now, in 1999, I was obviously a much younger man than I am today, but I was a man on a mission. I wanted to understand the relationships that people had with media. At the time, I was working for a company called CARA, an international media planning and buying organization, and our objective generally was very simple. We wanted to identify new means of creating efficiencies and effectiveness in advertising communications by identifying the media environments which people would be most receptive to advertising within. The product that we created to do that was called media chemistry, a qualitative and systematic qualitative evaluation of people's relationship with media. And it proved to be highly popular. I got to travel around the world for around 6 years with a team of people, and we understood everything about the kinds of programs that people enjoyed. But the real value for me was that it enabled me... Is this mic? Hello? The real value for me was that it enabled me to understand the sociology and psychology of media habits. And it was during this process, these 5 years, talking to people at different audiences, that I got to really understand why people loved media and content. And in fact, beyond this idea of connection and disconnection, there were 4 sub-drivers to consume. And you can see these here: enlightenment, escape, belonging, and social riches. So enlightenment is about being informed, being educated, being inspired. Escape is about being removed from reality, the day-to-day realities of life. Belonging is about attachment and fellowship. And social riches is about improving social interactions with others, with people that you know and strangers. So we concluded those investigations back in 2006, but more recent studies have also shown the significance of these motivations in determining people's relationships with media. I just wanted to refer very quickly to 2 of these studies. The first is a study conducted by the New York Times earlier this year, and they wanted to look at the relationships that individuals had with social media. So why do we use social media? It has to be more than just we want to connect. What they found was that these are the 2 motivations, and they've linked back into this idea to belong and to establish social riches. So we use social media because we want to grow and nourish our relationships. We use social media because we want to define ourselves to others. So here you can see, in terms of the percentages, why people said that they use social media. It's all about our ability to connect with other people. And the content in this case is just a facilitator of that. Now, this is quite an interesting topic for those of us who work in advertising, because there's a big debate at the moment as to how we use social media in advertising. And I think it's the same debate: how do we use social media in the context of any form of storytelling? It isn't about being friends of a brand or an institution if there's no facilitation of connections between people. We have to become aware of that, rather than thinking that we use social media like Twitter and Facebook simply as a means of distributing content. It's a platform that people want to engage with other people through, and that's critically important. The second program of research was actually conducted in 2010, and in this instance, 1,000 students around 10 countries in the world were asked to deprive themselves of all media for a full 24-hour period, and then to record their responses. And what we observed was that actually, in the absence of media, life breaks down. We can't do a great deal. We can't satisfy our emotional and social needs, and actually it can bring upon feelings of depression and anxiety. And these are just some of my favorite quotes that came out from some of these students. You know, I love this one: "I had the feeling that my cell phone was vibrating, even though I didn't have a cell phone. The only thought that was going through my mind was, I want Facebook, I want Twitter, I want TV." And then the girl in America actually gave up. She couldn't go for 24 hours without media. All of this and other studies have shown that media is critically important. It helps structure our lives. It's through media that we connect with other people. It's through media that we connect with things and ideas and become inspired. It's through media that we can disconnect from the world. And the reason I think that's really important is, as we think about the ways that we use new technologies in order to tell stories, we should think about these motivations as a platform, as a springboard for new ideas. How do we use motivations as a means of actually giving consumers not what they want, but what they need in order to survive? And this is very different to the way that we currently think about transmedia. So at the moment in transmedia, we think channel first. We tend to think channel first, and that's certainly present in the advertising world. You have a story, you think about all of the ways that you can distribute that story across all of the different platforms. And if you're really smart, you'll do some kind of behavioral analysis where you assess what kind of platforms your audience has a relationship with. The problem is that consumers do not think in terms of platforms. They think in terms of ideas. They think in terms of experiences that can enhance their lives. So a better approach is to actually say, let's think motivations first. What is a person looking for, consciously or subconsciously, from this story? And how can I deliver that using the technology as a means to do so? There are some other reasons why I think motivations as a platform for thinking, as a starting point, if you like, for new ways of storytelling is quite interesting. And one of those is this. We're not in the business of creating novelty. We're in the business of creating value. You know, typically when a new technology becomes available, the first thing that you try to do is do something new. What can we do new with this new platform? What can we do new with Twitter, with Facebook, with any piece of technology? Fact is, we're not in that business if you're a storyteller, if you're a communicator. You're in the business of creating value. And the most successful transmedia stories have always created value for that audience. It's allowed them to understand something that enriches their experience of that particular story. The second point is actually perhaps even more important. When you think about the media and technology landscape, you have to recognize that it's the most dynamic that it's ever been, and it's only going to become more dynamic. You only have to look at the stats, and these stats just relate to the United States, to understand how the media world is changing. You know, we consume more media than any time in history. We create more media than any time. We share more media, and we do so across more devices. But it's not just about media proliferation. It's also about media collision, innovation across platforms, creating new paradigms. And in these paradigms, I think it's important for us to recognize that we can't continue to think about stories distributed across platforms. We need to think about the ways that our ideas flow through these platforms, through these technologies, and indeed through people. So media collision is much more important than the proliferation of media, and that forces us to think very differently about the ways that we construct our stories. The third point is technology is constantly changing. I think this point was raised earlier. It is constantly changing, and those new technologies present us with new opportunities. To go back to this idea of new journeys through new technologies, we're in the business of actually taking audiences on fundamentally transformational journeys. And every piece of technology that comes about gives us an opportunity to do so. This is a piece of technology that some of you may know. It's by a company called Leap Motion. It's called The Leap. It will launch next year for $69. Leap is a startup based in New York who are really passionate about motion sensing and human-computer interaction. The technology called The Leap that they'll launch in February will enable people to have a 3D interaction with any particular screen, and they're starting off with a computer screen. That fundamentally changes the interaction that you think that somebody can have with a piece of content. When you can touch a piece of content virtually, it changes the way that you think that audience will be able to interact with that content. These are the kind of things I think we need to be cognizant of, even though I recognize we don't need to be thinking too far into the future. We need to be cognizant of the impact that these technologies are going to have on audiences. They're going to expect something else, and we need to be able to deliver that. At my agency, we typically talk about transmedia storytelling and cross-media storytelling by using the phrase dynamic. And a dynamic story is the art and science of creating a story that meets the minds and lives of people. And when we talk about a story, we say that a story has to be integrated, it needs to be impactful, it needs to be immersive, it needs to be interactive. But most of all, it needs to be human. When we're not technologists, in advertising at least, we're about stories, we're about human stories. that brands can connect to. And our ideas have to be simple, they have to be engaging, they have to be empowering, and they need to be personal. Those are the new philosophies that we need to build into our form of storytelling in order for them to be successful. I just want to leave you right now with a campaign that we've started that builds off some of these ideas. We're inspired by these ideas. Nature Valley, as some of you may know, is a granola bar, but rather than try to sell a granola bar based on its attributes, how many peanuts it has, we recognize and we're inspired by data that shows that people will buy a product based on the values of the company that creates it. So, to this idea that people are motivated to experience new things, to be taken on new journeys, we embarked on a really ambitious project to actually start bringing to life Nature Valley's sponsorship of the national parks in New York. And what's really important about this campaign is that the amount of effort that needs to go into creating an experience for your audience today is very different to the effort that goes into creating a TV campaign. It needs to be compelling. And I just want to leave you with a short, it's 1 minute 32 seconds, video of the effort that went into what we created.